So now we'll start adding annotations and dimensioning to our drawing, and I will begin this module with the dimensioning tools. So you can start dimensioning from the annotation panel of Home tab, and when you click on this drop down you'll see lots of tools which are available for dimensioning. Also we have this dimension tool which can be used for creating dimensions. Apart from that, we can also make dimensioning and other annotations from this annotate tab. So when you go to the annotate tab, you'll see many different panels like text, dimensions, center lines, leader lines, tables, markup, annotations. Now these are different panels which can be used for adding different kind of annotations. And here we have the dimensioning panel which we will use for this lesson. So I'll use this simple drawing and we'll add many dimensions to this drawing using the default ISO 25 dimension style, which can be seen here. We have this ISO 25 dimension style. We'll learn more about dimension style later on in this module, but first we'll start with this dimension style and we'll add some of the dimensions. So let's go to this drop down. I'll click here and you'll see lots of tools which are available for dimensioning. So I'll start with the linear dimension. So this linear option can be used to add horizontal or vertical dimensions. So let's click on this point and let's click on this point, and now click on the third point to place the dimension, and here we have it. So the dimension has been placed. So obviously for placing the linear dimension you need three inputs: the first point, second point, and the place where you'll put your dimension. There is also an alternate method of using this tool. So I'll select the same command and now directly I'll press enter. Now the point selection cursor will change into this big box, and now instead of selecting the starting and end point, you can simply click on the line and it will pick the dimension. Now you only need to click at a point to place the dimension. So you can use any of these methods. Now I told you that this linear dimension can be used to create only horizontal and vertical dimensions. So let's select it and let's try to add the dimensioning on the slant line. So I'll press enter, click on this slant line, and now you'll notice that we can make horizontal dimension if I move my cursor here, and we can make a vertical dimension if I move my cursor to this vertical direction. So you can choose any of these methods, but in order to make a dimension which is parallel to this slant line, you need to select the second option. So I'll press escape, and now I'll go to the same drop down and select this aligned option. Now using this aligned option, you can create that aligned dimension. So click at the first point, second point, and the point where you want to put the dimension, and here we have this aligned dimension. In this case also you can directly press enter and select the line for creating the dimension. Now let's look at the other option. So I'll go to this drop down, select the angular. So obviously using this tool you can add angles to lines or arcs. So I'll click on this first line, the second line, and now here we have the angle. Now this angle will be placed at the point where you click. So in this case, if I click here, the angle in between these two lines at this side will be created. If I move it to this side, the angle will be created here, even to this side or even to this side. So you can decide the side where you want to put this angle. So I'll click here, and now I'll repeat the angle tool, but this time instead of selecting two lines, I'll select an arc. So click on this arc, and now we have this included angle for an arc. So you can use this tool to create an angle for an arc also. So let's erase this angle for the arc, and now I'll go to the next tool. So click on the drop down, select this arc length. So this arc length is simply the length of arc. So I'll click on this arc and place it at a point. So this is simply the arc length from this point to this point. It's not the radius, it's not even diameter of this arc. It's the arc length along the circumference of this arc. Let's go to the next tool, which is radius. So obviously using radius tool, you can create radius for the geometries which can have radius. For example, circle or arc. So I'll click on this circle, and here we have the radius. Now you can select the same tool, click on the arc, and it will also have radius like this, so you can create it. Similarly, you can select this diameter option, and in this case, instead of this R, a phi sign will be added. So I'll click on the circle, and here we have it, the diameter. Now in this case, you can see that this phi sign which indicates the diameter will be added. If you press enter to repeat the command and select the arc, this time we have the diameter for this arc with the diameter sign. Now we have quite a crowded drawing, so I'll remove some of these dimensions to free some space here. And now let's look at other options. So I'll click on this drop down again, and here we have this jogged dimension. So this jogged dimension can be used to add radius to different geometries like circle or arc, and it will be added along with a jogged line. So let's select this arc for instance, and now I'll specify the center location. The center location of this arc is here. So click somewhere over here. It should not necessarily be on the center. I'll simply click here, and now we have this jog line. If you look at closely, you'll find that. So click at the first point to place the first jog line and the second point, and here we have this jog line. So these jog lines are generally used where the curvature of arc is very large and the center of that arc falls outside the current drawing area. For those cases, you can use this jogged line. For now, I'll simply erase it. And now let's look at the last option, which is ordinate. So I'll click on this drop down, and here we have this ordinate option. So using this ordinate option, you can enter X or Y coordinates of any point. So I'll select this rightmost point, the bottom right point. And now in order to add the X or Y coordinate value, simply click here and now move your cursor. So as you can see that this line is moving along the X axis and it's completely horizontal. That means this will be the axis of Y. Now click here. Now click on this point again, but this time I am moving it in downward direction, and now it's following the point along the vertical axis, and that is the X coordinate. So it might be a little bit confusing to you at this point, but we'll use another example later on in this module to make this ordinate dimensioning more clear. For now, you can assume that this is the Y coordinate value and this is the X coordinate value. So up to this point, we have seen that all of these dimensions are made on the default layer, which was currently active, and you can see that in this list also. The drop down, it shows use current for the layer. So whatever the current layer is, that will be used for all of these dimensions, but you can select your own layer as well for the dimensions. So I'll click on this drop down, and now I'll select some other layer. So in this case, let's select this layer 1. And now the dimensions will be made on that layer. So I'll go to this drop down once again, and I'll select radius. Now click here and make a radius, and you can see that it's now made on layer 1, and the properties of layer 1 are also inherited here. Similarly, you can switch to any other layer, and when you make the dimension, let's select diameter in this case, the dimension will be made on that layer. Even now, the layer will not change. When you go to Home tab, you'll find that still we have this layer 0 as the currently active layer, but still the dimensions will be made on the layer which we select. You can even select the dimensioning from this annotation panel. So even if you select it from here, the dimensions will be added on the layer which you assigned on this Annotate tab dimensions panel. So since we have assigned the layer 2, the dimension will be made on layer 2 irrespective of the current layer. So that was all about creating simple and basic dimensions in AutoCAD. In the previous lesson, we have used many different dimensioning tools to add dimensions on this drawing, but there is a direct tool also which can be used to add all of those dimensions in your drawing, and that is dim command. So you'll find that tool or command on the annotation panel, and it is this big dimension tool. On the Annotate tab, Dimensions panel, you'll find dim command here. So you can use the command dim, or you can use this tool here from the Dimensions panel or from Home tab, Annotation panel. So I'll go to this Annotate tab and I'll select it from this Dimension panel. And now I'll use this tool to add almost all of those dimensions. So click here, and now we'll start with the linear dimension. So first I'll click on the first point here, then the second point, and now I'll click here to place the dimension. So obviously the first dimension has been placed. Now similarly, if you directly go to the line instead of selecting the points, you can see that now again we have the same linear dimension. Now if you want to place a aligned dimension on this kind of dimensioning, simply click here and place the dimension. Obviously you can also create linear dimension. So for that, simply click on the first point, click on the second point, and now press and hold Shift key, and you'll notice that your dimension will change into linear dimensions. In this case, since I'm moving my cursor in this vertical direction, it's making this vertical, and if I move it downwards, it will make this simple horizontal dimension. So you can select any of these dimensions simply by pressing the shift key. So I'll click here and we have this horizontal dimension also. Now I'll press escape key and I'll remove some of these dimensionings. Now let's go to this tool again, and this time I'll go to this circle. And now as you can see that we have this diameter, so we can add the diameter. Obviously we can add a radius also. So I'll once again go to the circle and now look at the command line. So when this dimension is on the circle, you'll notice that the command line has more options, which is radius, jogged and angular. So let's select R and press enter. Now the dimensioning will change into a radius. So now click on the circle and we can add a radius here instead of a diameter. Similarly, you can do that for this arc also. So here we have this radius. You can change it to diameter simply by pressing D and pressing enter. Now, if you want to add arc length instead of radius or diameter, all you need to do is type L, and if you look on the command line, you'll notice that L has been highlighted in this arc length option. That's why we need to enter L. Now type L, press enter, and now instead of radius or diameter, we have this arc length here. Now let's look at the next option, which was angular. And to add angular dimensions, you simply need to select this angular option, or you can also type A and press enter for this angular option. Now you need to select the vertices. So click on this line and click on this line, and here we have it. So the 90-degree angle has been added on this vertex. You can even select more vertices if you want. So I'll simply click on this line, and as you can see that we are now making this horizontal dimension, but that hardly matters. Simply go to the second line and click, and that dimension will change into this angular dimension. Now in case you want to add the jogged dimension, which we have added in the previous case, once again go to this arc and now select J from the keyboard and press enter. So that will start the jogged dimension. Now click on this arc and specify the center point. So I'll specify the center location override somewhere over here, and obviously the jog distance here. So I'll zoom into this area, and this is the jog length, which is quite small in this case. And here we have it, the jogged dimension. Now, in order to add the ordinate dimension, you need to select that option from the command line, which we can see here. We have this ordinate option. So select the ordinate option and now click on the first point. So obviously in this case, if you follow this x-axis, so that will make the y coordinate, and I'll explain this logic later on in the upcoming videos. So click here, and that's obviously the y value of the coordinate. Now click on this point again and now follow this y-axis, and this will make the x coordinate value. So the x coordinate value of this point is 192.23 and the y coordinate value is 99.67. Now let's verify this result. So I'll press escape twice. Now I'll type ID, press enter, and now click on this point. And now look at the command line. So we have x as 192, which is here 192.23, and when you expand the command line, you can see the results, and the y value as 99.67, which is here 99.67. So that's the result. So let's collapse this command line. So this was all about the dim command, which can be efficiently used to increase your productivity. So now we have made the dimensions in our drawing. Let's modify these dimensions. But before that, let's have a look at a new layer, which is always created when you make a new dimension, and that layer is def point. So when you click on this layer drop down, you'll notice this def points layer. So this is the definition points layer, short for def points, which is always created whenever a dimension is added, and it stores all the definition points of your dimensions. It is always recommended to keep this definition points layer. You should not delete it, and if you try to delete this definition points layer from the layer properties manager, it won't be deleted, but obviously you can use ladle tool to delete it. But if you delete this def points layer, the drawing may start to show some errors. Also, the def points layer is on a no plot layer. That means the contents of this def points layer will not appear when you print your drawing. So most people use this property of def points layer to place objects which they don't want to show in the plot. But I would not recommend that. You can create a new layer and put all of the objects on that, and you can turn off the plot for that layer. Now moving on, here we have this drawing with some of the dimensions. Now this dimension is basically divided into 3 parts. Now the first part here, let's look at this dimension. I'll zoom here. Now the first part is the dimension line, which is this line with these arrowheads at the end. So that's called the dimension line. Now we have the extension line, which are these 2 lines. So this one is the extension line and this one is the extension line. You can see that by default the extension lines start from the point where we clicked, but a small gap is maintained. So that is done to keep the dimensions legible so that the dimensions can be easily identified from the drawing. Also, the third part is dimension text, which is here. Now we can modify all of these parameters of the dimension separately, and I'll start with this dimension here. So let's click on this dimension and now move on to this grip and hold your cursor, don't click. You'll see plenty of options here. Let's start with the stretch option. So click on this stretch and now you'll be able to stretch this dimension simply wherever you want. Similarly, when you hold your cursor there, select move with dimension line, it will have a similar effect on your dimensioning. Now go to this grip and now select move text only, and obviously in this case the text will move but your dimension line and extension line will remain unaffected. So let's click here and here we have it. Now let's go to the same grip and now select move with leader line, and a new leader line will be added with its trailing end on the dimension line, just like this. So let's go to this again and let's select move above dim line, and it will take your dimension above dimension line no matter where the position of this text is. Let's go here and now select center vertically. We have it here. It's now centered vertically on the dimension line, and now let's select the last option, which will reset its position to the default value, just like this. There are also plenty of options which are associated with different grips. For example, in this case we have this diameter now selected, and let's select this grip. Now in this grip we have only these 2 options, the stretch and flip arrow. We have already seen the stretch, by which you can stretch the grip point, and using flip arrow you can change the direction of this arrow. So I'll go to this grip and select flip arrow. Now in this case the dimension line has this flipped arrow. You can do the same for this side as well. So I'll flip the arrow and here we have it. So now this flipping of arrow can be used at crowded places where the arrow might be overlapping with the parts of the drawing, or if there is not enough space for the dimension text. In that case you can flip the arrow to generate room for the dimension text. The dimensions which we are adding here is associative, and that simply means that the dimension is always related with its parent geometry, and when the parent geometry changes, the dimension updates itself. Now to explain this, I'll change some of the geometries in this drawing. So I'll start with this circle. Now click here, and using these grips, let's click on this quadrant and change its radius. So as you can see that the current radius is 15.77 units. I'll just decrease its value and look at the radius. It's now changed to 10.11. So in this case the dimension was associative, and that's why it has changed. Now let's do the same for this side. In this case you can see that the length of this side is 60.66 units. Now let's select this stretch tool and I'll stretch this side of the geometry here. Now press enter and I'll click here, and as I stretch you'll notice that the dimension is also changing because it is associative dimension. Let's click here and here we have the changed dimension. So as long as your dimension is associative, it will change along with the geometry, but you can break this associativity simply by moving this grip. So if I move my grip from this point to somewhere over here, it will no longer remain associative. And now if I stretch my geometry, I'll click here and now I'll stretch it. You'll notice that it will not change the dimension, as we have already broken the associativity of this point with this end point. You can again make it associative by simply selecting the grip and moving it to this end point. Now it's once again associative, and if you select the stretch tool, the dimension will once again change along with that. So this was all about modifying the dimensions in AutoCAD drawing. Up to this point, we have used the default dimension style to create our dimension. So now we will learn about creating our own dimension style, and we'll create dimension using that dimension style. So for that, I'll go to this annotate tab, and now I'll click on this drop down. So when you click on this drop down, you'll notice that we have this ISO 25 and also this annotative dimension style. So these two are the default dimension style which will always be present in your drawing. Now in order to create a new dimension style, click on this manage dimension styles. Now this dimension style manager window will pop up, and it will have the two dimension styles which we have already seen. So when you switch between these two dimension styles, you'll see its preview in this preview box. We'll learn more about this annotative feature later on, but for now I'll select this ISO 25 dimension style, and now let's click on new to create our new dimension style. So when you click on this new by selecting the ISO 25 dimension styles, it will create a new dimension style which is a complete replica or a copy of this ISO 25 dimension style, and we can later on modify that dimension style. So I'll click on new and now give it a name. So let's name it as our dim style, and obviously we want it to start with ISO 25, and that means we need to copy its dimension style, and we don't want it to be annotative, so I'll keep this unchecked. Now click on continue, and we are now into this new dimension style window. Now we have lots of tabs here, so this lines, symbols and arrow, text, fit, primary, alternate, units, tolerances, and all of these tabs can be used to modify different features of the dimension and extension lines. So we'll focus on some of the very frequently used tools of the dimension style, and later on in the upcoming videos we'll obviously look at some of the advanced features of this dimension style. So currently the default dimension style looks like this, and we have used this dimension style to make all of our dimensions so far. Now in order to change the properties of lines, the dimension line and the extension line, you need to use the first tab. Now when you go to this lines tab, you'll see this dimensions line panel, and in this panel all the settings which are related to this dimension line, all of these straight dimension lines can be changed. So the first property is color. Let's change it to red, and you can see that the dimension line color has been changed. Also you can change the line type, you can change the line weight of this red dimension line, and in a similar way we have some options here for extension line. So these are the extension lines, so you can change its color to green just to identify it clearly from the dimension line. You can obviously change the line type for first extension line, the second extension line, and the line weight. If you want, you can suppress or remove the extension lines by clicking on these check boxes, and there are also plenty of options which can be changed depending upon the requirement. Now let's move on to symbols and arrows, and here you will see lots of options. For example, the arrowhead. So first we have this close filled arrowhead, but if you want you can change into any of these arrowheads. So I'll select this architectural tick, and the arrowhead now changed. You'll also notice that with the change of this first arrowhead, the second will automatically change, but if you change the second arrowhead, it will not change the first one. Now we have these two different arrowheads, which is obviously very bad practice, so you should keep both of them as same arrowheads. Also you can change the arrowhead type of leader line, or you can change the size of these arrows. You can also select between center marks. So right now a center mark will be placed at the center of these kind of geometries, and the size of center mark is specified as 2.5. If you want to add line instead of center mark, you can do that, or you can select none if you don't want any center mark. So I'll keep it at center mark. Also we have the arc length symbol. If you want it, keep the first or second radio button checked. In this case the arc length will precede the text. In this case it will be above the text. And if you don't want the arc length symbol, simply select the none radio button. So the arc length symbol will only appear when you create an arc length. Now let's go to this text option, and obviously in this case you can change the properties of this dimension text everywhere here. Now we have the text style, which is a standard, and we'll learn more about these text style in the next module. For now, I'll just go to this text color and I'll change it to yellow. You can also change the fill color or the background color of this text. Let's change it to cyan, and here we have it, the background color for the text. You can change the text height, and you can even draw a frame around the text. So for the sake of simplicity, I'll change the background color and I'll change it to none. We don't want any background color. Also, I'll remove this frame around our text. Now you can see that our text is placed above the dimension line, and it can be seen clearly for this dimension. Here it is placed above dimension line. Also in this case it is above and above. Now if you want it to be centered, or if you want it below, you can change it from these values. Now I've selected centered, and here we have it, it's now centered. Also for this horizontal text, you can select the option from here and the view direction left to right, or whatever the direction which you want. Now in this case, the text is always aligned with the dimension line. So if the dimension is aligned, the text will be aligned. In this case it is completely vertical, so the text is also vertical. But if you want the text to remain horizontal in all of the cases, then select the horizontal option and the text will become horizontal in all of these cases. You can also select the ISO standard value, and whatever the ISO standard follows will be applied here. So I'll select horizontal as I use in most of the cases. And now let's move on to the fit tab. And in this case, we will look at two important options. The first one is annotative. So if you want to make a dimension style annotative, select this annotative checkbox. And if you want to change the overall scale of dimension, including the dimension arrows, text, the gap, and all of these parameters, you can simply add a scale. In this case, I've used an overall scale of 1. That's the default value, and I'll not change it, but we'll create a new dimension style and we'll change the overall scale to explain it clearly. For now, I'll simply click OK with these changes and I'll close it. So now we will make our dimensions, but before that, make sure that our dim style is selected. Now this is the dimension style which we created and it should be selected. Now I'll go to the straight dimension, the linear dimension, and I'll add it here. And here we have it. The dimension will be added with the properties which we have applied. Even if you apply some other dimension like radius, it will take the same properties. And as you know that we have selected this horizontal placement for the text, it has been applied. Also the architectural tick is here. Now there are some parameters here in this dimension style which we have not yet changed. For example, the number of decimal points and also the decimal separator, which is comma in this case. So let's change these values, but for that I'll create a new dimension style. So I'll click on this drop down and I'll select manage dimension styles. So we already have this our dim style. I'll create a copy of this. So I'll select this and I'll click on new. Now I'll simply change its name to our dim style 1. And now select continue. Now we have all the properties as completely same. We'll simply change some of the parameters. The first one will be the overall scale. Now I'll change it to overall scale of 2, and all of the values including text height, arrow size, gaps, and everything will change to twice of its original value. Now let's go to the primary units tab, and here you will see values for these dimensioning formats. So in the linear dimension, we have selected this decimal. If you want to change it to architectural, so this will be the result. The dimension will be shown in feet and inches. Similarly, you can change the precision from here. To see this precision value clearly in decimal, simply select the decimal and you can change the precision to any decimal places, and the dimension will be shown accurate up to that many decimal places. Here we have the decimal separator, which is comma. You can change it to period or to space, whichever you want. So I'll select period in this case. If you want to add prefix or suffix with these dimensions, you can do that as well. And let's look at the angular dimensions value now. So in this case, the angular dimension is decimal degrees. You can change it to grades, radians, degree, minute, second, whatever you want. And here also the precision is set to 0. Let's change it to 2 points of decimal. Now with these changes, I'll simply click on OK and close it. Now let's make our new dimension, but for that, once again I'll make sure that our dim style 1 is selected. Now I'll go to angular and click on this point and click here, and now add the angular dimension. And here you'll see that the size of this dimension, text, arrow and everything is twice of its original value because we have selected that option. Also, the decimal separator is 0, and the angle is shown accurate up to 2 decimal points because we have selected 2 decimal places for angle. So in this way, you can create and add your own dimension styles with different properties in your drawing. In this video, I will tell you about the dimension style overrides. So in the previous video, we have made a dimension style, and using that dimension style, we can add dimensions in our drawing. Now, what if we want to make very small change in that dimension style? And what if we want to make only a few dimensions with that changed dimension style? For that, obviously, we can create a new dimension style. But if you don't want to create a new dimension style, you can create a temporary override of that dimension style, and you can add dimensions with that. To make this point clear, I'll go to this annotate tab, and I'll make sure that this dimension style, our dim style, is selected. So when you click on this drop down, you'll see a preview of that dimension style. Now with that dimension style selected, I will make a few dimensions. So I'll select linear, and then I'll click on this endpoint, and then I'll click on this endpoint and I'll add the dimension. So here we have this dimension with this red dimension line, green extension line and yellow text. Now let's make a small change in this dimension style. For that, I'll once again click on this drop down and I'll select manage dimension styles. Now here we have this our dim style. In order to change it, or in order to add the override, simply select this dimension style and select this override button. Now it will open the modify dimension style window with all the properties which are assigned to our dim style. Now we'll make some modifications here. So I'll change the color of dimension lines to bilayer and also the extension lines to bilayer. Now I'll leave the text color as yellow and now click on OK. Now you'll notice that a new style override has been added under this dimension style. Now click on close. And let's make a new dimension. Now we have this dimension with the changed property, and it's taking the properties of our dimension style override. You can even add more dimension styles and it will still take the property of the override. In this way, you can remove the dimension style override from the dim style window. So click on this drop down, select manage dimension style, and now from this dim style window, simply right click on the override and select delete. You can also rename this override to make it a permanent dimension style. So if you rename it, it will become a new dimension style, but we don't want to do that. We simply want to delete that. So I'll select yes, and the override is no longer present, but still the dimensions will have the property of the override. Now if you want to remove these properties and if you want these dimensions to have the property of the original dimension style, then simply select the dimension, right click and select this option, remove style overrides, and will return back to the original dimension style. You can repeat the process for this dimension or any other dimensions also if they are present in the drawing. So this was all about the dimension style override tool of AutoCAD. In this video, I will tell you about continue, baseline and ordinate tools of AutoCAD dimensioning. So I'll use this geometry and I'll start with the continue dimensioning. So using the continue dimensioning, you can add a chain of dimensions in your AutoCAD drawing. To make this clear, I'll go to annotate tab and I'll make a simple linear dimension. So I'll select the linear tool and now click on the first point here and second point here, and now I'll add the dimensioning. So here we have this simple dimensioning. Now for adding dimensions for the rest of the part of the geometry, you can use either continue, baseline or any other method if you prefer, but in this case I'll select the continue. Now to select the continue tool, go to the dimensions panel and expand this flyout and select the continue option. And before selecting this continue option, always ensure that a new dimension has been added. So this dimension which we have added here will be taken as a reference for this continue dimension. So now click on the continue tool, and now you'll notice that the next dimension will start from the endpoint of the previous dimension. Now we only need to click at the next endpoint, and we need to continue clicking on the subsequent endpoints, and the dimensions will be added just like this. To exit this command, simply press enter. So now you have noticed that in this case we have made this dimension, and all of these dimensions were taken as a reference from this dimension. So it's always necessary to make a primary dimension so that the continued dimension can take a reference from its endpoints. In a similar way, you can add a baseline dimensioning. So I'll add the baseline dimensioning on this side. For that, once again, we need to create a base dimension which can be used as a reference. So I'll select this linear tool, and I'll click on this point as the first point and this point as the second point, and here we have it, the first dimension. Now once again go to the flyout and select baseline, and in this case the next dimension will start from the first point of our dimension, which was this point. So for making this dimension, I've selected this point as the first point, and that will become the base point or the baseline for our dimensioning. Now we need to click on the next point and next point and next point, and all of these dimensions will start from the baseline. Now press enter twice to exit this command, and here we have this baseline dimension. Now in this case, if you notice closely, you'll find that the gap between these dimensions is very little, and in order to resolve this problem, you need to modify the dimension style. So I'll go to this dimension style by selecting this manage dimension styles option. We have this ISO 25 selected. Let's select modify, and now go to this lines tab. Now here we have this baseline spacing which we need to modify. So in this case it has been set to 3.75. Let's change this value to 10, and that will increase the gap. Now click on OK and click on close. Now in this case the change will not become visible because we need to apply new dimensioning. So I'll erase all of these dimensions, and once again I'll create the base dimension, and I'll click this point as the first point. That will be the base point and the second point, and now click here. So the dimension has been added. Now simply select the baseline option and add the subsequent dimensions like this, and here we have it. All of these dimensions are added, and the gap between all of these dimensions is now changed to 10 units. So let's erase all of these dimensions, both continue and baseline. And now we'll have a look at the ordinate tool. So using the ordinate tool, you can specify the X and Y coordinates. In this case, this lower left point is on the origin, or it is on the 0, 0 coordinate value. So in order to add the ordinate value, go to dimensions panel and expand the first flyout and select this ordinate tool. Now you need to specify the first point. So in this case, I'll select this point as the first point, and now I'll specify a point where I want to put this, and here it is. Now in this case, you can see that the coordinate value of this point is 0, and this will be the Y coordinate value. Now you can press enter to repeat this command, and now I'll click on the next point here, and we have this next ordinate value, and once again this is the Y coordinate value. Now this simply indicates that the first ordinate value or the Y coordinate value is 0, and the second one is 33.98. That means the gap between this point and this point is 33.98 units. Now you can press enter, click on the next point and specify the next ordinate value, and these are all the values of Y axis for all of these points, and they can also be used for dimensioning. Now if you want to add the ordinate values for X axis, then once again select this tool, click at the point, and now make it in this side or in this direction. Now we have this ordinate value for X. Press enter, select the next point, and here we have it. So this is the X value, and the distance between this and this point is 34.82 units as specified by this X value. Similarly, you can press enter and add more X coordinate values for all of these points, just like this. So in this way, you can add ordinate values in the drawing, and these are also used in some of the situations for dimensioning. So this was all about continue, baseline, and ordinate tools of AutoCAD dimensioning. In this video, I will tell you about adding tolerances and dual dimensioning in the AutoCAD drawing. So I'll start with this drawing and I'll add a simple dimension. For that, I'll go to this annotate tab and I'll select the linear dimension. Now click on the first and the second point, and here we have it. Now in this case, we have this dimension which is simply the base dimension or the dimension without any tolerance value. So this is theoretically exact value, which is not always the case. Almost every drawing has dimensions which are accompanied with tolerances. Now in order to add tolerance in this dimensioning, you need to modify its dimension style. So once again, I'll erase this dimension style and I'll go to the dimension style manager. So I'll click on this drop down, select manage dimension styles, select the dimension style which I want to modify, in this case ISO 25, and select modify. Now we are in this dimension style manager. Now here we have an option of tolerances in this tab. So select this tolerances tab, and in this case you'll notice that the method has been selected as none. So change this to any other value. In this case I'll select it to symmetrical, and here you'll see the difference. So when you change it to symmetrical, you will be able to apply a upper and lower limit. Both of them will be same, and you can control the precision value of the tolerances also. So in this case the precision has been set to 2 decimal places. I'll keep it at 2, and here we have the upper value. So if you change the upper value, the lower value will change equally. You can even change it to some other value, for example deviation. In this case upper value and lower value can be different, or you can change it to limits. In this case, the upper dimension value and the lower dimension value will be mentioned. And we have the last one, basic dimension, in which case we don't have any of these tolerances, and this is the theoretically accurate dimension which is enclosed in this rectangle. So I'll change it to deviation, and precision will be 2 decimal places, and now I'll change the upper value to 0.02 and the lower value to 0.03, and now I'll click on OK and close it. And now let's make a new dimension once again. So I'll click on the first point, second point, and here we have it. Now in this case we have the upper value and the lower value for our dimensioning. Now if you add more dimensions here, all of these dimensions will have the same value, the upper and lower value. Even when you add a radius to this drawing, it will have the same value. But it's not mandatory. You can change these values selectively even when the tolerances are applied directly to the dimension style. To change these values selectively, select the dimension which you want to modify, then right click and select properties. Now scroll down, and here in the end you'll see this tolerances panel. Now from this tolerances panel, hover over to this tolerance limit row, and here you'll see that the lower limit has been set to 0.03 and the upper limit to 0.02. Let's change this value. So I'll change the upper limit to 0.01 and I'll change the lower limit to 0.05. Press enter, and now you'll notice that the values will be changed here also. In a similar way, you can select as many dimensions as possible, and then you can modify their combined properties if required. So let's once again move back to the dimension style, and I'll remove these tolerances. We don't need it as of now, so I'll change it to none. Now let's go to this alternate units. Now using this alternate units tab, you can add the alternate or the secondary unit to your dimension. So currently all of our drawing is mentioned in millimeters, but if you want to have an inch dimension also added in this drawing, then you can do that using this alternate units. So when you go to the alternate unit tabs, you'll notice that all of these options will be inactive. To make them active, click on this checkbox, and that will make all of these options active, and it will also add an alternate unit. Now in this case, the unit format has been set to decimal, so you can change any other format if you want. So I'll keep it at decimal, and I'll change the precision to 2 decimal places, and here we have the multiplier, which is quite important. Now in this case, the multiplier has been set to 0.0393700 and a long string of characters. Now this multiplier will decide the value of this alternate unit. In this case, 1 millimeter is equal to 0.0393700 inches. So whatever value mentioned on the drawing, when multiplied with this value, will result in inches. So that's the multiplier for alternate units. So in this case, I'll keep this value unchanged, but if you want to add your own multiplier value for your dimension, you can add it here. Now the placement of this secondary or alternate unit is right after the primary value. In most of the cases, drafters prefer to keep it below the primary value. So above the dimension line, we have the primary dimension, and then below the dimension line, we have the secondary or the alternate dimension unit. So I'll keep this option below primary value, and I'll click on OK and close it. And now you'll notice that we have the mm value above the dimension line and the inches value below the dimension line for all of these dimensions. And in this way, we can add the alternate or the secondary dimensioning unit to our drawing. And obviously, the secondary unit will be decided by the multiplier. In this case, the secondary unit is inches, because the multiplier was set accordingly as 0.0393 and a long string of characters, obviously. So that is the approximate value which needed to be multiplied with mm to have results in inches. So that was all about adding tolerances and dual dimensioning in AutoCAD drawings. In this video, I will tell you about adding feature control frame in our AutoCAD drawings, and the feature control frames are added for representing tolerances and most of the geometric dimensioning and tolerancing information. So in order to add the feature control frame containing all of the GD&T symbols, you need to once again go to the Annotate tab. Now in this Annotate tab, at first we need to add the normal dimensioning, and I'll add the normal dimension, the linear dimension actually, in this drawing. So I'll start with this first one. Now I'll click at the first point, then the second point, and I'll add the dimension. Now in this case, we have the dimension, but obviously we don't have the tolerances and all the related information. In order to add that, we can obviously add the tolerance as we have seen in the previous video, but the more accurate or the more acceptable method of adding the tolerances is using the GD&T symbol or the geometric dimensioning and tolerancing symbols, and that can be done with feature control frames. So in this case, I'll expand the dimensions panel and I'll go to this feature control frame option, which is mentioned as tolerance. So let's click on this tolerance, and this funny looking geometric tolerance window will pop up. Now in this case, most of the symbols might be unfamiliar to you, but don't worry, just have a look at these, and if you feel really intimidated by this, then have a look at the GD&T guide which was released by ASME. So it has nothing to do with AutoCAD, it's completely new topic as I've already mentioned. Now in order to start this, we need to first specify the type of tolerance. So click on this first box and it will show a list of all 14 symbols. So select the type of tolerance from this 14 symbols. So I'll select the position tolerance, which is denoted by the first symbol. Now here a phi symbol will be added, that is for cylindrical tolerance zone, and now the tolerance value. So that will be 0.02 in this case. Let's assume that it is 0.02. Now we need to add the material condition modifier. So when you click on this, you'll see these three material condition modifier: the maximum material, the least material, and the regardless of feature size. So you can use any of these depending upon your component. So I'll select maximum material condition. Now I leave this tolerance 2, and now I will add the datum. So I'll add A as the datum, and if you want to add the material condition modifier, you can click on this and you can select it, or you can click on this white space if you don't want to add any of these. Again, you can add more datums if you want, and you can add the material condition modifier for those datums as well. Now click on OK, and add this feature control frame with its related dimension. And now here we have it. So in this case, this can be read in this way. The dimension of 76.11 unit has a position tolerance of 0.02 unit at maximum material condition with respect to datum A and B. And obviously we need to specify the A and B datums. Now to specify A and B datums, we'll use leader line, and we'll learn more about multi-leaders and leaders in the upcoming videos. So for this case, I'll select the leader, and I've already prepared this leader to show the datums. So I'll just click on this point, and now here I'll add A as the primary datum, and now I'll select multi-leader and I'll add the secondary datum here as B. Now we have these two datums, and this tolerance value of the dimension will be with respect to datum A and B, datum A and datum B. Now if you want to modify this feature control frame, you can modify that simply by double clicking on it. So when you double click on this, it will open the geometric tolerance window, and you can modify and add more values to this. For example, let's say that we want to add a material condition modifier with datum A. So I'll click here and add the material condition modifier, click on OK, and here we have it. Now let's have a look at this drawing. So in this case also, if you want to add the feature control frame, you need to again go to this tolerance option and once again repeat the process. So I'll once again select the position tolerance. Obviously you can select any other value, and the tolerance zone, the value of tolerance, the datum, which is A. And now here we have this projected tolerance zone. So if you have any projected tolerance zone, you can click on this. So that will indicate the projected tolerance zone, and you can specify the height of that projected tolerance zone. Let's say that its height is 10 units. So type 10 here. Now click on OK and add it with the dimension. So obviously we have not added the dimension in this case, and that you need to add here, but you can add this feature control frame with this. And here we have the datum, so we need to add the datum here with multi-leader. So click on multi-leader, specify the datum wherever you want. So in this case I'll specify datum here, and here we have it. So that was all about the feature control frame tool of AutoCAD. In this video, I will tell you about adding multi-leaders to our drawing, and you can use multi-leaders to add information to your drawing using the leader lines. So the leader line or the multi-leader tool is available on the annotation panel. So when you go to the home tab annotation panel, you'll see in this drop down the multi-leader and all of its related tools. Also, the multi-leader tool is available on the annotate tab. And here we have this leaders panel on which we have this multi-leader tool. So you can select this multi-leader tool from annotate tab or from home tab. So I'll use it from this annotate tab and leaders panel. So click on this, and now it will prompt you to specify the arrowhead location. So click at a point where you want to place the arrowhead. In this case, I'll click somewhere here, and now click at the second point. And that will be the second point for your leader line. Now you need to specify the text which you want to enter here, and I'll type oil tank as the text. Now click outside, and here we have the multi-leader. So this multi-leader has been added to specify certain parts of the drawing, in this case the oil tank, and you can use it as many times as you want in your drawing. So let's add a few more multi-leaders. So I'll click on this multi-leaders, and I'll click on this point now, and I'll add a new text, oil valve. Let's click on it again, and this time I'll select this point, and now I'll type fasteners, and now click outside. So here we have these three multi-leaders. So these three multi-leaders are taking the property of the default multi-leader style, which is a standard, and it's just similar to the dimension style which we have already seen. So you can create your own multi-leader style, and that will decide the properties of these multi-leaders. You can not only add multi-leaders from this leaders panel, but also we have a completely different tool from where you can add multi-leaders, and that is called tool palettes. So type Ctrl 3 on your keyboard and you'll find this tool palette. So this tool palette will have lots of different objects including blocks, multi-leaders, tables and many other AutoCAD components. But since we are interested in multi-leaders, I will click on the bottom of this tab list and I'll select leaders. So from the list of all of these tabs, select leaders and the list will populate with all the multi-leader styles. In this case, we have the imperial samples here and also the metric samples here. So I'm interested in this imperial samples. Now here we have the first leader, which is without any text. So you can select it to add this kind of leader line with arrow and everything, but without any text. You can use this, the second option, to add a completely similar kind of multi-leader. And the third one is a leader with circle that will add. So in this case, a circle will be there at the end of this multi-leader. So I'll select it and now I'll click on this point and now click on the second point and this edit attributes window will pop up. Now from here, simply add the text which you want to add. So I'll add 1 as the text and click on OK. And here we have it, a text which is enclosed inside the circle. Similarly, you can use other multi-leaders like leader within a box, select, and this time the text will be included within a box, just like this. So I'll simply erase it, we don't need it. And now let's add a few more of these with the circle. So I'll select the second point and now I'll add the second text. Let's type 2, let's select it and let's type 3, click on OK. You can also use all of the remaining options, for example hexagon, triangle and other geometries. So in all of these cases, the trailing end will have the similar kind of geometry as mentioned here. So let's now close this tool palette, and this was all about adding multi-leaders in our AutoCAD drawing. In the previous video, we have made these multi-leaders, and in this video we'll learn to edit these multi-leaders. So I'll start with this oil tank multi-leader. So let's click on this and you'll find these grips. Now using these grips, you can modify many properties of these multi-leaders. So let's start with the landing line length. So in this case, you'll see this triangular grip, and when you click on this grip, you'll be able to increase or decrease the length of this landing line. You can also change the length of this landing line using this grip. So when you hover your cursor, you'll see this lengthened landing, and now you can change its length in this way. If you want to add more leader lines, you can do that as well. So go to this grip, but don't click, hover your cursor and select add leader, and now you'll be able to add more leaders like this. So let's press escape and press Ctrl Z to get back to the original drawing. Now in case if you want to add extra vertex to this leader line, you can do that as well. So click on this multi-leader and hover your cursor on this end grip and now select add vertex. Now using this add vertex, you can add additional vertex. In this case, you can see that I have added this vertex and the arrow end is here, somewhere over here. So you can add that as well. So let's press Ctrl Z to get back to the original multi-leader. There are also several tools which are available on the leaders panel which can be used to further modify these multi-leaders. So I'll start with the first one here, which is this add leader. So using this, you can add more leader lines to your existing multi-leader. So now after selecting that add multi-leader tool, I'll click on this fasteners multi-leader, and now we have an option of adding more leader lines. So I'll just click on this endpoint, and now we have multiple leader lines indicating a single text here. If you want to remove any of these leader lines, simply select the option here, the remove leader option, and click on the multi-leader. Now you need to click on the leader line which you want to remove. In this case, I'll click on this one because that's the one which we want to remove, and press enter. And here we have it. Now if you want to collect all of these multi-leaders and if you want to align them into a single line, you can do that with this align tool. So let's click on this align and now select all of the multi-leaders which you want to align. So I want to align all of them. So let's select and press enter. Now select the leader which you want to use as a reference, and all of these multi-leaders will be aligned with reference to that. So I'll select this oil tank and now simply press enter. And as soon as you'll do this, you'll notice that all of these leaders will align in a straight line with respect to the oil tank multi-leader. Now there is an option of collecting the multi-leaders. So using this collect option, you can collect multiple multi-leaders and you can convert them into a single multi-leader. But for that you need to have this kind of multi-leader on which the trailing end has a block. We'll learn more about blocks later on, but we have added these multi-leaders using the tool palette, and this tool will only work on the multi-leaders which were added using tool palettes. So for using that tool, I'll select all of these multi-leaders and now press enter. So now you'll notice that all of these leaders are collected into a single multi-leader and you can place it anywhere, just like this. If you want to change the ending point of this multi-leader, you can use this grip and move it to your desired point, just like this. And here we have it, the collected multi-leader. So in this way, you can modify your existing multi-leaders in the AutoCAD drawing. In this video, I will tell you about creating the multi-leader style, and up to this point we have added multi-leaders in our drawing using the default style which was a standard. Now in order to add a new multi-leader style, go to this drop down and select manage multi-leader styles. So this will open multi-leader style manager window in which you can see that we have a single standard style. Now select new and give it a name. So I'll name it as our custom style and click on continue. So this will open this modify multi-leader style window, and here we have these three tabs: the leader format, leader structure and content. And using these tabs we can modify the properties. The preview of your multi-leader will appear in this preview box. So let's start with this general panel in which we can change the type of multi-leader, currently which is set to straight. So you can change it to spline, just like this, or you can even remove the leader line altogether using the none option. So now we only have the text and we don't have any leader line. So I'll change it to spline, and now we have the color option. So you can change the color to any value which you want, and we have options of line type, line weight, as we have seen in the dimension style. Also we have the arrowhead and the size of arrowhead, so you can change any of these values which you want. Now here we have this leader structure which has 2 points in this case. So you can change this to multiple points, and in this case we were required to click at the first and second point. That's why we have this 2 point. So if you add more leader points, you will be required to add multiple vertices for creating the multi-leader. Also we have an overall scale factor here which is set to 1. So you can change this scale factor to increase or decrease the size of multi-leader collectively, and it is also very similar to the overall scale which we have seen in the dimension style. So let's go to the content, and now we have the text option. So you can use it to change the properties of this text. So we have the default text which is selected here, the text style which is a standard. So we'll learn about text style in the next module, and we have the text angle and all of the remaining properties that you can obviously change. So I'll just keep these properties and I'll change a single property which is text color. So I'll change it to red, and now I'll click on OK and click on close. Now let's make a new multi-leader. So I'll select the multi-leader, I'll click at this point, and here we have it, the multi-leader. So let's add our text. So I'll add cooling fins and click outside, and here we have the multi-leader as per the changed multi-leader style which we can see here in this list also. So if you want to toggle between this multi-leader style and the original multi-leader style, you can change it from this list. So you can select standard, and now all the multi-leaders will be made with the standard style, as you can see here. So let's erase both of them. And this was all about creating multi-leader and multi-leader styles in AutoCAD. Okay, so here is the question related to this module. Now we need to make dimensions in this drawing, and the dimension should be exactly same as they are here in this drawing. So you need to ensure that the properties remain same. So now we'll start this with the linear dimension, and you can do that you can add the dimensions from annotation panel, or you can also go to annotate tab and add the dimensions from here. So I'll simply go to home tab and I'll add it from here. So here we have the linear dimension. Now click on the first, then the second point and add the dimension. And we have lots of problems with this dimension. The first thing is size of dimension, which is very small. Now let's zoom into this and you'll find that the precision is also 4, but in our original drawing it was 2 decimal places. So we'll change these two values. So I'll go to annotation and click on this dimension style option. Alternatively, you can also expand it and click on manage dimension styles. Now I'll select modify and I'll go to fit tab, and from here I'll change the overall length. So I'll change it to 3 and then I'll go to primary units, and here you can see that the precision is set to 4 decimal places. So click on the drop down and change it to 2. Now click on OK and close it, and there we have it. Let's zoom out. Now we can add rest of the dimensions. So I'll go to linear once again, click on this point and click on this point. There we have it. Now the third dimension is angle over here. So I'll go to this flyout, select angular, click on this line and I'll click on this line, and there we have it. Okay, so now we need to add a diameter over here. So I'll click on the flyout again, click on diameter, select the circle, and here we have it. Now once again we have a problem here. So in our original drawing we can see that this extension or this extra portion is not available. So this needs to be removed. So I'll once again click on annotation flyout, select it, and I'll select manage dimension styles. Now go to modify and go to fit tab, and here we have this extension line option. So this should be off. As you can see here in the preview, we have this extension line, but when you uncheck it, that extension line will not be visible. Now click on OK and close it. There we have it. Now I'll go to this flyout again, select radius, and I'll apply the radius to this fillet. Now we need to add the last dimension, which is length. So I'll go to again this flyout, select linear, click on this endpoint, and I'll click on the midpoint here, and there we have it, the dimensions. So now all of the dimensions are added as per our requirement.